Hello, this is Rabbi Gutierrez again, and in the previous video I looked at the testimony of Reuven, son of Rabbi Nissim, a survivor of the violence of 1391, and I wanted to give you one more testimonial about the violence of 1391 because I think it's a very powerful depiction of the sufferings of the Jews of the Iberian Peninsula during this period of time. This one is given by Rabbi Hasdai Crescas. It's rather lengthy, but I think it's important to look at it. So I'll be reading this section, and if you'll bear with me, I think you'll find it to be very interesting. On a bitter and horrifying day of Rosh Hodesh Tammuz 5151, the Lord stretched out the enemy's bows at the great community of Seville, wherein were 7,000 or 8,000 heads of households. They set ablaze its gates and killed many, but most of them converted. Others among the children and women were sold to the Ishmaelites, that is, to the Muslims, and the streets of the Jews were deserted. Many died a martyr's death, and many violated the Holy Covenant. From there the fire spread and consumed all the cedars of Lebanon of the community of Cordoba. There, too, many converted, and the community was destroyed. On the 17th of Tammuz, a day of pain and admonition, a day of multiple sorrows, the anger of the Lord lighted on the community from which the Torah and the word of the Lord had gone forth, namely the community of Toledo. Priest and prophet were killed in the Lord's temple. There the rabbis publicly died a martyr's death. The good and chosen seed, the seed of Rabbi Asher ben Yehiel, Rabbi Yehuda, grandson of Rabbi Asher, they and their sons and students. There too many who could not defend themselves converted. On these three communities the earth roared. Aside from other communities and their environs, their number came to about 70 cities. And we have been on guard night and day. On the 7th of the month of Av, the Lord swallowed without mercy the community of Valencia, in which there were about 1,000 households. And those who died a martyr's death were about 250 people, and the survivors fled to the hills. But few escaped, and most converted. From there the plague spread to the communities of Majorca, set in the sea. On Rosh Hodesh Elul, intruders entered and violated her and spoiled and plundered her, and abandoned her like a trap with no fish in it. About 300 souls died a martyr's death, and about 800 fled to the king's tower, and the rest converted. On the following Sabbath God spilled out his wrath like fire, and desecrated his temple, and violated the crown of his Torah, namely the community of Barcelona, which was breaded on this day. And the number of those who were killed came to about 250 souls. All the rest of the community fled to the tower, where they took refuge, while the enemies plundered all the streets of the Jews, and set fire to some of them. The hand of the ruler did not prevail, but he wanted to save them with all his might, and he provided the Jews there with bread and water, and he set out to bring the criminals to trial. Then came the road of simple people, and the masses rose up against the rulers, and fought the Jews in the tower with bows and catapults. They struck them and beat them there in the tower. Many died a martyr's death, among them my only son, an innocent lamb. I have offered him up as a burnt offering. I will vindicate the judgment and be comforted with the goodliness of his portion and the pleasantness of his fate. And among these were many who slaughtered themselves, and among those who threw themselves from the towers and had not descended halfway before they were torn to shreds. A few left the tower and martyred themselves in the street, and the rest converted. Only a few escaped to their surrounding towns. A child might count them, but they are important men. And for our sins there is not one in Barcelona today who can be called an Israelite. This very powerful testimony given by Rabbi Hasdai ben Crescas continues, but I think you get the gist of the trauma and the violence that was experienced. In this particular case, Rabbi Crescas, his own son, died in the midst of these attacks. And it gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the suffering that was endured by the Jewish communities of Castile and Aragon and the areas that are surrounding the major cities. So we'll continue with our discussion in future videos, and we'll look at other documentation of the period and try to build some sense of what the sufferings were of Jews in that time frame.